All right, moving onward to the equations here. When we have equations, we're going to factor the denominator, find the least common denominator, and then we're going to multiply both sides or each term by the least common denominator. And when we were adding or subtracting fractions, we didn't necessarily multiply both sides by the least common denominator. We just got a common denominator. So here we're going to end up multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. In this one, we see that our least common denominator, we need a 3 and a p squared is our least common denominator. So we're going to multiply each side, which when you multiply each side, it gets distributed and really is multiplied each term by that common denominator. And when we do that, it's like a 3p squared over 1, if that helps you. So in this first term, the p squared simplifies with the p squared, and we're simply left with a 3. The next one, the 3p squared, actually simplifies with the entire 3p squared. And realize we have a minus sign here, so minus p minus 1. There's those parentheses again because that negative is going to get distributed. Equals, this p simplifies with one of these, so we have a 3p. And now we have a nice simple equation to solve. So we had a complicated one with fractions by multiplying by the least common denominator. It's a lot easier to work with. So we distribute this negative. We get 3 minus p plus 1 is equal to 3p. 3 plus 1 is 4, and we're going to go ahead and add p to both sides. And so we have 4 equals 4p. Dividing both sides by 4, we get p is equal to 1. We should go back and check to make sure our solutions are not the excluded values. Remember, excluded values are values that make the denominator equal to 0. Putting a 1 in there will not make the denominator equal to 0. So our answer is p equals 1. Our next one is a little bit larger looking. We need to find our least common denominator, and this needs to be factored. And so we'll factor this. This is 1 over, and these actually sometimes are hints on these. So my factors, I need a 4x here, a 4x squared. So because I have these other factors here, that's going to be my first guess that it's actually a 4x plus 1 times x minus 3. Of course, we want to check that. So 4x times x is 4x squared. That's what we wanted. 4x times negative 3 is negative 12x. Plus, when you multiply these, you get plus 1x, which is the negative 11x, and this is the negative 3. So that is correct. Then we'll subtract 1 over x minus 3 is equal to 1 over 4x plus 1. Now our common denominator here is 4x plus 1 times x minus 3. So I'm going to multiply each term by that. So 4x plus 1 times x minus 3. By that term, 4x plus 1 times x minus 3 to this term. And the same thing over here. And what's going to happen is it will eliminate the fractions because of simplifying. So in here, let's go to one last color. The 4x plus 1 cancels with 4x plus 1. The x minus 3 cancels with the x minus 3. This leaves us with a 1 here. Do not put a 0. When things reduce, when something's divided by itself, you get 1. Over here, notice that the x minus 3 simplifies with the x minus 3. Here's a place to be careful with signs, so we have a minus here, and then again, parentheses, because that's going to be distributed. And then over here, the 4x plus 1's simplify, and you're simply left with that x minus 3. And again, we end up with a fairly simple equation. This fraction's going, or this negative's going to distribute, so 1 minus 4x minus 1 is equal to x minus 3. We actually have a 1 and a minus 1, which is 0, so we just have negative 4x equals x minus 3. We'll subtract x from both sides. Negative 5x equals negative 3. Dividing both sides by negative 5 gives a 3/5. That is not excluded from here because it won't make either of those 0. So our answer is x equals 3/5. And our last equation, factoring. This would be n times n minus 5. This is just an n. This is the same thing, so n times n minus 5. And so we are going to multiply each term by that common denominator of n times n minus 5. And what will happen is all the denominators will end up canceling. Whoops, forgot the n. And so in our first term, n reduces with n minus 5 with n minus 5, and we are left with n squared plus 4n minus 12. Then we have a minus sign. N reduces with n, and we end up with an n minus 5 times an n plus 4. And on the right side, n reduces with n minus 5 reduces with that. We're just left with an n minus 3. So over on the left side, we need to multiply out these binomials. I'm going to leave this negative here, and I'm actually going to put my answer in parentheses because that negative will get distributed. So we get an n squared. I'm going to do 2 steps here. This gives us a 4n minus 5n. Well, 4n minus 5n is negative n minus 20, because negative 5 times 4 is negative 20, equals the n minus 3. We'll go ahead and distribute this negative to each term. And it ends up making it an easier problem because we won't have squareds anymore once we combine these like terms. N squared minus n squared is 0. 4n plus n is 5n. Negative 12 plus 20 is 8. Equals n minus 3. We can subtract n from both sides. At the same time, we can go ahead and subtract 8 from both sides. And we get 4n is equal to negative 11. Dividing both sides by 4, we get n equals negative 11/4. And so that's the end of the solving equations. Hopefully I didn't make any mistakes in there.